Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another broadcast of Northwest Georgia Cryptics. Uh, Mr. Blake is not going to be able to join me tonight, but taking his place is Chuck Turner. Chuck is a real good guy that we interviewed here a few weeks ago, and he offered at the last moment to step in and take Blake's place tonight. Blake had a all-night investigation up at the old Pittsburgh, South Pittsburgh Hospital in Chattanooga. Uh, and he was tied up there all night and didn't get any sleep hardly today. So we asked Chuck to come in and join us tonight. Chuck will be taking Blake's place. Blake will be back with us next week. He gives his apologies to everybody. Tonight, our guest is Mr. Richard. Richard, go ahead and tell the folks your name there, bud.
My name is Richard Threadgill, and I grew up mostly in Arkansas. I live in Poto, Oklahoma right now, about 34 years old.
All right, Richard, just normally we take you off and we'd take you off for a minute and do it in our little intro, but folks will do us a little different tonight. Like I say, uh, please welcome Chuck in tonight. He's taking Blake's place. Uh, please give a big welcome to Richard. Uh, Tonight will be, oh God, a dollar. Oh, that's my Sasquatch dog over here. Uh, But tonight, folks, we'll be interviewing Richard about his and his uncle's encounters out in Arkansas. Uh, Hope to have a real good show. Chuck, is there anything you want to say, bud, before we go live? Before we
Rick's
go
got
into
his Rick's got his early warning system over there with him tonight.
it? Hey, that's for sure.
And I just
Hey,
had a
Rich,
pause. Go ahead.
no, Richard, we appreciate you being here tonight, and Rick, I appreciate you uh, letting me step in for Blake. I by no means am as good as he at this, but I'll try to do my best and try not to make myself look like a fool.
hey, bud. Listen, anytime during the broadcast tonight, if you've got any questions for Richard, you just jump in there and ask, man, okay?
All right.
Richard, what I'm gonna do right now, bud, is give you the floor. Let you kind of go through your encounters, you and your uncle's encounters, and like I said, if uh, Chuck or I either one have any questions for you, we'll chime in. So go right ahead, man.
All right. I guess I should probably begin chronologically because my uncle's the one that first encountered anything. Oh, it was probably 86, I believe. And they lived on a hog farm south of Blue Mountain Lake there in Yale County and Logan County in Arkansas. Pretty much middle of nowhere. You didn't have many neighbors, nothing major. And he'd have to go down to the hog barn when they were having piglets, and he'd have to, sit and watch over them. Well, he's about almost to the hog barn, and he seen eyes down the road, about 100 yards in the ditch, is on the left side, and he looked at his dogs. He had several dogs, and he said, "Sick it." So they took off after it, and they ended up getting within 12, 15 feet of this thing, and they stopped. They would not budge anymore, and he ain't paying attention to anything because he's sitting there chewing his dogs out. It's like, why ain't you getting it? Come on, get it. And then he pans his flashlight. He pans his flashlight down. He sees feet, and he proceeds to pan it up to about 8 foot, and he catches the eyes of this thing, and this thing's just sitting there looking at him. Has
Wow.
red eyes, eye shine from the flashlight. And the way he put it, he's like, this thing was not concerned about me at all. It just stared, sat there
Mm-hmm.
looking at him. And he had a 410 shotgun with him, and he said he looked down at that shotgun and decided that thing wasn't near big enough for this. So it took 2 steps, as it was on a normal dirt road, not like a huge road or anything like that, but it took 2 steps, one in the middle, one in the other ditch, and it was across the fence and gone. Then the dogs took off after it. He heard one of the dogs yelp, and she came back, and she had the hide on her leg torn off almost all the way down. So he had to sew her
Wow.
back up. He said the dogs would take off after this thing occasionally, and then sometimes they didn't want no part of it. for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So that was probably his first encounter. His second encounter comes almost like a horror movie because I believe it was in wintertime for sure, he told me. And he'd go down to the lake and he'd look for arrowheads because Blue Mountain Lake, when the lake is low, is a really good place to find arrowheads. So he's down there looking for arrowheads, and he has this 3-wheeler. It's a pull start, which comes into the story here in a minute. And he says
I
he
see this one
just
coming.
yeah, it's straight out of a horror movie almost. Anyway, he says he gets this feeling like he's being watched, so he starts panning around. And there's this little grove of like mesquite trees, probably about 7 to 8 feet tall in total, give or take. And there's something behind him looking over him at him. So they sit there and look at each other for a moment, and then it just starts using its arms and pushing the trees out of the way and starts moving forward. So he flips out, he runs to the 3-wheeler, and he's sitting there just cranking it over and over, and it ain't starting. Then he realized, hey, dummy, you got to flip the on switch. So he does that. And the way the road worked, the road curved back around towards it. So he took off straight through the woods as fast as he could go. And it never chased him or anything that he knew of. But my mom told me she remembered him pulling up in the driveway because, they're kids at the time. They're like 15, 16 years old. And she said he stormed in the house and he was white as a ghost, just petrified. And of course, my grandma at the time didn't believe him. She thought he'd seen something else, but it freaked him out pretty good too. And
Richard,
then,
Richard, let me ask a couple questions right here.
Go ahead.
When your uncle saw that thing the first time, did he describe colors or shapes or any physical attributes other than 8 foot tall and big?
He got a good look at his face. He said his face wasn't really hair covered. Let's see. It had a kind of a pudgier nose, not like an 8, not like a human, just somewhere in between, and a real big mouth. And he said it just sat there and looked at him like, I ain't worried about you at all. You ain't nothing. Of course, something that big.
One of the things that you said really caught me by surprise, and all of the Richard, you probably didn't even watch you might not have seen my podcast that I did with Ricky, but I've never seen one. I heard them and saw a handprint on my vehicle the next morning. But of all the accounts that I've ever heard, yours is the first one I've ever heard of a dog taking off after it. Usually they're right up under the owner's feet and will not move.
He said they would at certain times. They would take off after it. He had like 5, 6 dogs. Had a couple of beagles, some other dogs. I can't remember exactly what all they were. And it's like occasionally, I guess that it'd send the message like, this ain't the time to be messing with me, and they wouldn't even try. Then other times they'd take off after it. I don't know if they ever got close enough after that first encounter to catch it, but I don't know. It's just really odd that they would take off after it at certain times, and other times they would cower.
Well, guys, I think that by dogs doing this, I feel that they can actually sense what kind of mood that these creatures are in. Because now I had an encounter on Big Frog Mountain. I don't know if I told you about this, Chuck, last time we were on here together. But I had an encounter in 1984 on Big Frog Mountain. 2 guys a couple of weeks before this happened had told me about the previous year them being chased off Big Frog up there by what they called a hairy man. And so me being inquisitive, this was after my sighting in 1981. So I decided to go up and check it out. I took my blue tick hound. She was about 6 months old with me, Miss Dixie, and we got up there that night, set up camp, found the old remnants of their camp. They had run off and left. When they encountered this thing, they had run off and left everything. Lantern stoves, Matter of fact, I found a shotgun that one of them had left up there during their altercation with this thing. All of this was leaf covered when I found it. But I went ahead and set up camp at night right there in the same spot they were camped in. Uh, and my dog at that time, she loved chicken breast. She was 8 months, 6 months old. She loved chicken breast. So I'd actually taken some fresh chicken breast along that night and had cooked these things for her. Well, about probably, I don't know, 9:30 that night, we started hearing like this fatal grunts off in the woods below us. Now, I never saw this creature, but we finally, me and the dog went to bed. She went to bed, laid down in the tent with me. Along about 10:30 or so, she jumped straight up, every hair on her bristle. She started barking, shot out of the tent, run out into the woods about 20, 30 yards below me. Uh, I laid there in the tent for a couple of, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds. I heard a loud yelp out of her. I grabbed my shotgun, my handgun, or my flashlight and my handgun. I run down into the woods. I'm looking around frantically looking for her. I finally found her. And when I found her, she was dead. Whatever this was, I grabbed her, looked like by the back legs, and just worked her against a tree, and her neck was broken. I never did see the creature, but right below where she was laying, there was a log, maybe this big around, maybe a little bigger, and whatever it was big enough that it had stepped on that log and snapped that log. I never heard the log snap. I guess I was just frantic state looking for my dog. I never heard the log snap. I never heard anything else out of the creature other than just a few brushes break as it went down through the woods. Now, whether this was a bear that done this to my dog, whether it was Sasquatch or what, I don't know. But I can tell you this: uh, there was no slap marks on the dog, no claw marks or anything where the dog had been slapped. It looked to me like the dog had actually been grabbed by the hind legs and just worked against a tree. And a bear can't do that. So, you know, I laid that up for years.
The only thing a bear's going to do is slash.
Right.
Yeah.
Slash and bite.
Well, I'll say this. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Richard.
I'll say this. Where they lived at on that old hog farm, I know they dealt with bear occasionally because that part of Arkansas has one of the highest bear concentrations in the state, and they know what a bear looks like. My uncle knows what a bear looks like, and he said there ain't no way in hell this is a bear. So I believe that.
Well, there's, like I said, I've never seen one, but I've seen plenty of bear, and it's kind of like training the bank teller. They don't give them counterfeit money; they give them real money and let them feel it, and then when they feel the counterfeit, they know it. I believe I've seen enough bear to know.
Yeah.
That you'd know if it was or it wasn't.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so too.
And the other thing too is, it's standing upright and it's walking across the road. A bear ain't gonna do that. A bear will waddle, but they don't walk.
And I've been out to that road, and I had to jump to get to the middle of that road. There ain't no way I could make a stride like that. So that wasn't a person.
Yeah, Richard, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
Second encounter.
All right. Let's see. The next encounter he saw, he'd gone to Boonville, which is a town about 12, 15 miles away. I mean, this is how remote that is. This is the biggest town in that area, and it's that far, and it's almost entirely by dirt road. You got to get there. So him and his buddy had gone to go see a movie, and they were on their way back. And about 4 miles from the house, they had a flat. He said he was looking all over, couldn't find his jack. So they decided, well, we're only a couple miles from the farmhouse. We'll just go down there. We'll get a jack, get another truck, and come back up here. And they were right beside this cemetery walking by, and this thing stood up in the background of the cemetery, and it was a bright moonlit night. He said you could just see the hairs shining off of it, and it was bigger than the first one he saw. And he thought he had this moment of fear, and he thought he told his buddy to run because I don't think it made him move towards him, but it freaked him out enough that his fight or flight instinct took over, and he thought he told his buddy to run. Well, his buddy didn't. His buddy turned and looked and seen what was trying to figure out why Craig had taken off down the road, and then he seen it. He didn't catch up to my uncle for about 2 miles, running straight. And he said that thing at the shoulders was probably 5 feet across. He said it was absolutely massive. It was a lot bigger than the other one.
That's like that old saying goes, you ain't got to be the fastest as long as you ain't the slowest.
Yeah. He did tell me later he was in cowboy boots doing this. Wow. So he got up pretty quick. And let's see. There's another encounter. I still don't think I was born yet. I didn't come along until 87. I know one night.
I graduated high school.
Yeah, I'm 34 now. Anyway, one night they're all in bed, probably about 11 o'clock at night, and something just hits the side of the house as hard as it can. It shook the whole house. It's an old farmhouse. And my mom even told me it felt like something trying to come through the wall. So the dogs took off after it, and he takes off, grabs his clothes on, grabs his shotgun. He grabbed the 12 gauge this time. And he runs out to the road, and the dogs were trailing it back around in a big loop, and he watched it go across the road down there and then disappear off into the woods, and he never saw it after that night. Don't know why.
Let me ask y'all a question. Let me pose a question to both of y'all. What do you think it is about the house slaps and the camper slaps and you hear that over and over and over and over again? Either of y'all have an opinion about that?
Well, my opinion on that, Chuck, is that these creatures are very inquisitive to what's in those, to what's in the house, to what's in the campers, especially a camper. You take a camper that you got out in the woods, and you're in their territory then, and I believe that it's them getting your attention to let you know that they are there and that you are in their domain. And if one of them is in the right mood, that it's not trying to be physical, to my opinion, all it's doing is just going to let you know that he's there. But now I have spoken with people and interviewed people on the broadcast that have told me that they've had these encounters, especially out in the campers in the woods, and some of them actually get physical above just a slap on them. So, I spoke to one guy a couple of years ago on this thing that actually told me that they were in a small, I think he said like a 12 or 14 foot camper, one of those what they call them teardrop deals, and they encountered one down in South Georgia that actually grabbed hold of this thing and flipped it over with them in it.
Oh hell!
Mike just said what my opinion is. He said, I think they want you to come out because they can't watch you when you're inside. I think that's kind of what I think. I think they're just inquisitive, and it's kind of like TV for them. If you're inside, they ain't got nothing to watch.
Right. Yeah. And we as investigators know that once we go into the woods, guys, we're their entertainment. Mm-hmm. If we're out there in the woods with them, we are their entertainment. And I tell that to everybody. That's something that we are their entertainment when we're out there.
Yeah, I agree with that. Both of them, actually. I mean, it makes sense to me. I mean, if it wanted to come to the wall, it could have, so.
Yeah. Richard, I interrupted you again. I'm sorry.
You're fine. That's perfectly all right. And okay, I think his last encounter was I'd just been born not too long before, after this, or so. No, yeah, it was after I was born, and they'd been my mom and dad went out there to visit him, and my mom was busy loading up, the playpen and stuff, and she heard this loud crack, and it kind of freaked her out. I mean, she stopped, the dogs on the porch stopped, and she said it was just pure silence, eerie silence. So she walks in the house and she told my uncle, she's like, something's out there. So he walks outside. The dogs still wouldn't get off the porch for whatever reason. And he walks to the end of the drive and he sees it across the drive into the wood line. It's thick forest on the other side of the drive. And it's just standing there watching him for whatever reason. And he freezes. He didn't freeze with the other ones, but this one he froze. And he said he could smell it. It was just awful smell. And it freaked him out. He just stood there frozen like a statue. And my dad, who was with him, came up beside him, and he's saying, Craig, you all right? And then my dad finally turns and looks, and about the time he turns and looks, this thing takes tearing off the woods. This is thick stuff, and they could hear branches break and limbs crack and all that through there as it took off. Then the dogs took off after it.
Now, Richard, where exactly? I mean, as far as you said, you're in Oklahoma, but geographically,
Yeah.
where is that? Northeast, southeast?
Well, this all took place in Arkansas, so
Where you're at now is what I'm talking about.
where I'm at now compared to that, southeast of me, give or take.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you live in southeast Oklahoma, right?
Yep. I live in LaFleur County, which is also a hot spot.
I don't know whether you're familiar with the North American Wood Ache Conservancy.
I've heard of them.
If you're not, they're neighbors to you. I'll put it that way. You could delve into some stuff that's actually going on close to where you live now. If you kind of research them a little bit.
Yeah, I've heard of them. Sorry, train going by. I know it's loud. Yeah, I've heard of them. I just haven't been in contact with them, but I know where this all took place, 45 miles from where I live now, so it ain't really that far. Poto's just across the state line of Arkansas to Oklahoma.
Yeah. How far are you from? How far where this took place? How far is that from Falk?
From Falk? Oh boy, Falk's all the way down in the south portion, southwestern side of Arkansas. So,
okay.
100, 150 miles, probably, maybe a little bit more. That's just a ballpark. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest most thoroughly investigated areas for Bigfoot.
Yeah, I've watched The Legend of Boggy Creek and all that, and honestly, I was talking to someone and they said there's no reason that part of Arkansas we lived in shouldn't be just thick in them, But people are so tight-lipped they don't talk about this kind of stuff because everyone thinks you're crazy.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's.
Ricky, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, Ricky. But I think that some of that stigma is going away. It's kind of like I told you before, Ricky. It's kind of like playing the banjo. We're enough years past deliverance to where playing the banjo is cool again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the Bigfoot phenomena is kind of the same way. There's enough science involved in it now that it's becoming more okay to talk about.
Right. Well, guys, I've been playing banjo off and on for the past 50 years, so deliverance really didn't do a whole lot for me on nothing that I play the banjo, but I still pick out a few chords every now and then. But yeah, you're right, and that's one reason that I have this broadcast every week, like I told y'all in the past, is to where I can give people opportunity to come on and share their stories, share their encounters, things that's happened to them concerning these creatures, and any cryptids as far as that's concerned. As cryptozoologists and investigators, this is something that not just Sasquatch. We do paranormal investigations. We do basically any type of investigations where somebody's had an encounter with a cryptic. We'll get out there and find out all we can about it and share it with people. You know, uh, One of my favorite shows for a few years was Mountain Monsters. I know there was a lot of foolishness that went on that show, but hey, I really enjoyed watching it. I really did love the characters on there, and also, I think out of 6 or 7 years that I watched it, about the only thing they ever caught was Hogzilla, the big 700-pound hog that they actually caught. But it was
They
still
catch each other every once in a while.
I like watching old Bill on there. He was something else, but it was really a decent show. Uh, Finding Bigfoot, I watched them all.
Yeah.
And Richard, you said that those were your uncle's encounters?
Yeah, and they also had some other weird, kind of unexplained stuff happen out there. I know one story that caught my attention. They had a hog shed in one of the pastures, right? It was made out of tin and metal and all that, and they fit it together in such a way that this roof that they put on it could come right back off. It fit over the sides of the hog pen.
Mm-hmm.
And it took 4 to 5 guys to lift this thing and put it on that top of that shed. Well, the next one day they go out there and this roof is over the fence and into the hog lagoon. There'd been no wind the night before, nothing. This thing probably weighed 400 or 500 pounds. It didn't look like it hit the fence. There were no drag marks on the ground from wind. It was just there. From there to the hog lagoon, probably about 12 feet or so, and it had just been tossed for whatever reason. That was an odd one. Another uncle of mine, I guess he'd be my great uncle, him and an aunt or a cousin, I can't remember which, were up on behind their property, a place called Tater Hill, which is a couple miles down the road from the hog farm. And they found footprints in the snow, bare footprints. This is behind their property. This is remote. There ain't going to be no one out there wandering around. And they followed them all the way up close to this rocky outcropping in a cave. That's where the prints just disappeared.
Yeah,
so that was kind of creepy.
That's something else that, one thing that they taught us when I was in the Army when it comes to tracking something is, you figure out a stride length of something.
Mm-hmm.
If you're tracking a person, you figure out a stride length. And for a normal man, it's usually 32, 34 inches, something like that. Well, you cut your string 32, 34 inches when you lose the track, and you start swinging that string till you find the next track. And from that track, and then you get back on good tracks. Well, a lot of times with Sasquatch, you hear about tracks into the snow and then poof, gone.
Yeah.
And that's something right there that it puzzles me because, and I know this is one place where I think Rick and I differ a little bit, but, I'm of the opinion that, differing opinions just mean good conversation, in my opinion. But I'm a firm believer that Sasquatch is just a flesh and blood creature. And other people have different things, but that right there still puzzles me. Trackways that stop and don't go nowhere.
Yeah, I'm of the impression it's flesh and blood too.
As I've told everyone, on the show, my grandfather was full-blood Cherokee. And Grandpa told me, you know, that you're tracking an animal and the trackways disappear like that, that a lot of times those things, uh, and he was referring to I guess, bear or whatever. Uh, but a lot of times those things backtrack themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I do truck. I'm like you. You know, there's a lot of different opinions out there on Sasquatch about their abilities. Uh, I do feel that you know I do feel they have a supernatural ability about them. What that ability is, I don't know for sure. I've never actually encountered it other than, you know, I told you on the show here a while back that I think I have had an encounter one time with a mind speak, but I don't, you know, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to say for sure on that. Uh, I've talked to a lot of people that claim to have had those type of encounters with them. Uh, Now, whether it's actual telepathic encounters that they're having, whatever, I don't know.
You know,
Uh,
one thing that I think too, Rick, we as humans over time, I think that we have somewhat, not totally, but somewhat, almost like a sixth sense, the ability to know when something's not right, the ability to know when run is a word that you need to be knowing right that second. And I think that, and this is just my opinion, but I think that some of that mind speak, and I'm not discounting what you know what happened with you, but I think that some of that mind speak is your own intuition telling you, you know, what what you need to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
right, right. And Richard, you know, I don't know if I told you this while we were talking the other night or not, but what Chuck and I are referring to is an encounter I had a few years back down in South Georgia. Uh, I was down there camped out. I went down on Friday, and I was camped out Friday and Saturday into Saturday night, and I kept getting this nagging feeling that I needed to leave, that I needed to leave. So about 10 o'clock on Saturday night, I packed up my stuff and I came back to North Georgia, back to where I live, and had a couple of guys, you know, rib me up there with us, did an investigation. I was chickening out. Well, it wasn't that. It was just something, you know. I just kept having this feeling in my head that I needed to leave. Well, I packed my stuff up about 10 o'clock at night, and I left and come back home. And that was on Saturday night. Well, the next week, a friend of mine that lives down there in the area called me and asked me if we'd encountered any law enforcement while we were down there. And I told him no. And he informed me that they had found a body of a young girl, I think like between 14, 16 year old, that she had been murdered and dumped about 2 miles from where we were camped at over there.
Mm.
They'd found her on the following Sunday after I'd left them down there on Saturday night. So that was that was that was just weird to me. And we were down there actually doing Sasquatch investigations. So I don't know. I'm not going to say, and as I've always said, I'm not going to say that these creatures telling me that. It could be exactly what Chuck's telling me. It's something that my sixth sense is telling me. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. That's possible. I think it's might be. I don't
And
know.
Richard,
I figure a sixth sense. Go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say. I think a sixth sense. I mean, how long have we been around these creatures? I mean, our ancestors and such like that. This might be, instinct for us to be wary of them.
Well, the other thing too is, we've been around these things long enough that, you know, what's to say that we can't? And one thing, and I've told Rick this before, I have a very open mind when it comes to these things because nobody's an expert on it. But who who is to say that we can't communicate with our minds. I'm not the one to
Mm-hmm.
say that, but I lean towards an intuition, but I'm not ruling out the fact that it could be possible.
Yeah. Oh, and if it gets too loud out here, tell me, because it just started raining again.
I don't even hear it, Rich.
That's a good thing.
I know, Richard, you had told me earlier in the week, Richard, that you were planning on starting an investigation team out there of your own. Have you given any more thoughts to that?
Yeah, me and my uncle are both going to do it, and got several other guys that are wanting to do it with us. And I think, yeah, we're going to at least attempt it. We already got a spot that one of the guys that's going to join us, he has activity there around his house, something slapping on the side of his house, like the one on the old farm. And that he doesn't live too far from there. So I think we're going to try it out.
And Richard, you said also that you had some experiences of your own.
Mm-hmm. Now, mine ain't quite as impressive as Craig's, but I've heard vocalizations and I've had a lot of weird stuff happen. Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but a few weird things happened when I lived in a little town called Belleville, which, if you know anything about Yale County, Belleville and where the old hog farm is, 20 miles cross country, if that. It's still in that River Valley area. You got Mount Magazine on one side, and you have these other mountains on the other, which we call the Bear Mountains, which is where we think they go. We're not for sure. And the initial start of mine was in 2007. Golly, the rain's picking up. 2007, I was me and a buddy. We go fishing down the Pettigene River bottoms, and there's this old sloughs that we would hit up, and we go catch bowfin, or some people call them grinnell.
Mm-hmm.
Really good eating. We really enjoy catching. They fought a lot.
Mean, and they'll tear your finger off, though.
Yeah, I almost found that out by accident. So I had a limb line out one night and pulled it up, and it was dark. I couldn't tell what I was wrangling with, so I jumped on it, and I'm like, wait a minute, this ain't no catfish. This thing got scales. I looked at its mouth, I was like, holy crap, it has teeth.
Got plenty of teeth, too.
Yes, it does.
Guys, I actually have one of those mounted out in my shop. I'm an ex-taxidermist. I run a full-time taxidermy studio for 20 years or longer up in Murray County when I lived up there, and I had a friend of mine bring one of those things in, and I had encountered gar. I'd mounted basically, I guess, about any kind of fish, even piranha and everything else. But now when he brought that one in, that one was kindly a new one to me. But I went ahead and mounted it. Didn't know exactly what it was going to look like, when I got the finished product done. But actually, the fish turned out, man, it turned out fantastic. It really looks awesome.
Yeah, they are an odd-looking fish, especially for around these parts. You're not expecting to catch one, then you catch one, and you're like, what is this?
But this one,
all right, Richard,
go ahead, Chuck.
I was just going to tell Richard, I took us down another rabbit trail, and I need to quit doing that and keep us on the path so we can hear about what happened to him.
Boys, we talk a little bit about everything on this.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
I was going to tell Chuck that this one that I got mounted actually came out of the tailwaters over at Lake Lanier, over at Buford Dam.
Yep. I've caught some good trout out of that water right there.
Oh yeah, I have too. I was at the Blue Ridge 3-4 weeks ago. Me, my grandson, and one of my neighbors, and I caught I had probably about a 15 and a half inch German brown out of there that night while we were up there. Very nice fish. And actually, I turned out my neighbor. He's all the time tell me about all the big rainbow and brown that he's caught. And we were up there that night, and out of the three of us, I was the only one to catch fish that night. Actually, I was the only one I caught, but it was a very impressive fish for what I did catch. And I've been ribbing him ever since about his ability to catch fish. So,
Ricky, when we get off here, I'm gonna send you some pictures.
Well, anytime you can catch fish and they can't, it's good.
Chuck, don't make me ashamed of myself. What he's gonna do?
So, Richard, y'all were down in the backwaters of that river, and what happened at that point?
This is an '07, and it was in December, but it was unseasonably warm. Of course, y'all know how that goes in the South. I mean, December can feel like summertime sometimes. But anyway, we decided to go night fishing that night. And my buddy, he's actually chopping up wood to throw on the fire. We had a fire going already, but he just wanted some more on it. And I'm already fishing. I'm sitting there, I'm zoned in on what I'm doing. And about 12 o'clock, I guess it was 12 o'clock, this weird call, I heard it from about 60 yards out. You ever heard that whooping call? It's been recorded and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, many times.
Yeah, that's what I heard. This is a whoop. And I can't really do it very well. And then it followed up by another whoop. And I wouldn't say it startled us at the time, but we were both kind of scratching our heads because we're from that area. We never heard anything like that. So I put down the fishing pole and he stops chopping wood, and we're sitting on the other side of the fire and we're talking about it, and we hear it again. This time it's about 30 yards out, give or take. But instead it does one whoop, then it starts out almost like a whoop, then it goes or something like that. It's really weird.
Mm-hmm.
And that one, I don't know why, but that raised the hair on the back of my neck. And I had a little Cocker Spaniel with us at the time. He's beside me and he's shaking and shivering, and it ain't because he's cold. Yeah. he's freaked out pretty well, and I think me and my buddy were freaked out equally. So I grabbed the dog, we left all of our stuff, and I went through the passenger side of the old Jeep Cherokee. And I dove to the passenger side because the sound came from the driver's side, and I've seen this horror movie before, so no way I'm going over there. Bail in, and I didn't want to even see what it was, so I backed straight out. And I know on that dirt road I hit 90 going back to town. Really, it was kind of dumb because it has an S curve in it and everything, so I'm hauling. But we come back the next day, and we'd brought food with us. We were going to camp out the night, and we're going to eat out there and everything else. We had burger patties, we had some vegetables and some other stuff that were in the tent. I can't remember if I zipped the tent up or not, but anyway, the tent was unzipped and all of our food was gone. So that was weird. And then I backtracked to about where I heard the sound, and I found a 16-inch track.
Wow.
And yeah, I kind of kicked myself because I had an old flip phone at the time. Took a picture of it, but I lost that phone since. I'm pretty sure I broke it. I don't have that picture or anything, so it's just my word, on that one.
One thing that you just said, Richard, that really I think sometimes when we're looking for evidence or we're looking for we're trying to figure out what something is. A lot of times you may not figure out what it is, but by figuring out what it's not, it only leaves you just, a choice or two left.
Yeah.
You were saying that, you heard that noise, and I'm sure, the night that I heard the noises that I heard, my mind started out, was it a bear? No. Was it a woodchuck? No, it's nighttime. Was it a chipmunk? No, it's nighttime. Was it, and you kind of rule what it is by ruling out what it's not.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we really did. Because I know it wasn't a bear, it wasn't a deer. In fact, I'd never seen a deer out there, which I thought was really odd. Though that kind of
Mm-hmm.
changes up a little bit later. See, I told my mom about all this, and she's a believer in it for sure because she knows all the stuff that happened out on the hog farm. But she didn't quite believe that we would have an encounter out there. This is just a mile from our house. This ain't far at all. So they they have a little too much fun one night. My buddy's mom and my mom are best friends at the time, and they want to go. They want to go looking for Bigfoot, and we're like, this is a bad idea because me and him after that night we didn't want to go back down there. I don't know why. Just it bothered us to go back down there, and it seemed like that night bad luck was going to strike, regardless of what I did, because I'd never gotten that Jeep stuck. It's full wheel drive, everything else. And wouldn't you know it, I bury that thing up trying to get back in there. So we're stuck. And of course, I'm not in a good mood. He's definitely not in a good mood because we don't want to be there as it is. And my mom and her friend are, they're laughing, carrying on. So we decided to walk back to town. We're not being quiet about it. We hit the dirt road. And the dirt road does, as I mentioned earlier, does an S curve back into town, back towards town. And right there at that S curve, it's really heavily forested. It is thick. You can't see 2 feet past the trees. And we get 25, 30 yards from there, and we hear the loudest crack I've ever heard. It was a branch breaking, I'm pretty sure, and it just snapped. And that's the only thing we heard. But as soon as we heard that, everything just stopped. It's like this fear just washed over us, this feeling of dread. So we back up into the middle of the road, and you just feel like you got eyes on you. And so we made a call to my dad, who lived a little ways away from where we did. And I swear that's probably the longest 20, 30 minutes of my life waiting on him to show up. Because that fear just never left. It was always present until his truck came rumbling around the corner. And yeah, we just backed up back to back in the road and stood there watching different directions.
All right, Richard,
You remember how I said I'd never seen.
Again.
To
me, that just shows again that could very well be our sixth sense.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Richard, you were talking about having.
Well, you remember.
You talked about having a limb break there in that particular situation. How close was that limb break to you? Could you tell?
25 yards.
So,
just 25 yards, maybe 30.
So whatever it was fairly close to you.
Oh yeah, whatever it was, if it was one of these things, it could have came out and nailed all 4 of us very quickly. It'd have been nothing we could have done.
I personally don't believe that these things do anything by chance. I think that everything that they do has a purpose. And I think you're not going to know they're there unless they want you to know they're there, unless you come around the curve and there's one standing there. I don't believe that they're going to break that branch unless they want you to hear them break that branch. I don't believe.
I honestly think. Well, I honestly think we were being too loud, and I think that was its way of telling us to shut up.
Yeah.
Because we weren't being quiet going around towards that curve. We're just talking and everything else and acting like things are normal. And that branch broke, and we shut up.
Yeah, you minded, didn't you?
I wasn't gonna disobey him. That's for sure.
Chuck, you touched on a good subject there, bud. You're exactly right. When these creatures encounter you in the forest, and sometimes it might not be that they don't want you there, but it may be that you're just making too much racket for them. And as I've said, many times on the show. We don't know the exact body structure of these creatures. We don't know how good they can hear. We don't know how their sense of smell is. Uh, it may be 10 times better than ours, and that could be
Mm-hmm.
exactly what it is. It could be that the racket that someone is making uh, is very sensitive to their ears, and they do this just to get you to quieten down.
Well, I think another aspect of that too, Ricky, is back to the thing that I talked about earlier, back to the watching TV. You know, if you know they're there, you might give them a little bit more entertainment than if you don't know they're there.
That's true.
True,
It's
that's
like
true.
look at the four
Yeah,
poor humans cowering in the middle of the road. Ha ha ha.
You know, look what I can
yeah.
do by breaking a stick.
Yeah.
One gonna change stations.
If he'd come out of that wood line, I'd have needed a new pair of pants. I know that.
Well, guys, I've encountered these things uh, by myself, Blake and I, myself and other investigators that I've been out with. We've encountered these things. We've had rocks from pebble size thrown at us. One night, Blake and I, back in 2011, were down at the lake at Altoona, and guys, we had them uh, throwing rocks at us the size of basketballs.
Mm.
And what really made it so wild about this was we were out in the middle of this cemetery. Now, it's an old cemetery, the old Macedonia Cemetery down there. It's 3 mile off the main road uh, that goes through there. Down, you turn off the side road and go down toward the cemetery is at. It's 3 miles back in there, the cemetery is, away from the main road. There are a few houses built on the back side of the cemetery, but we were out in the middle of the cemetery and under a tree that night, standing in an old uh, Civil War soldier's grave, and the grave was made with stacked rock, stacked up on the top of the grave, about probably 3 foot high. We were standing there and had our REM pods and stuff out doing a paranormal investigation, and all of a sudden, from 60 yards to our left was a tree line, and whatever this was throwing rocks the size of basketballs through the air and then coming down through the top of this tree we were standing under and landing within 3 to 4 feet of our feet. Now, never hit, they were like five of us down there, 5 or 6 of us that high. These rocks were landing strategically within 3 to 4 feet of our feet, where our feet were at, in front of us and to the side of us. Never a rock, never touched us. But this thing let us know that it could take one of us out at any time with one of those rocks.
You know, Rick, I've heard many times uh, the accuracy of these things with throwing rocks. And Richard, I don't know what you think about the wonderful game of baseball, but I've been wanting Alex Anthopoulos to get us one on the Braves to pitch. So.
I was about to say a couple of years ago I could have used one as the Arkansas Razorbacks quarterback. I don't know. I mean, if I'm under the opinion that if it meant to hurt you, those rocks would have hit for sure.
If you're not, if he means to hurt you, you don't stand a chance.
Oh no, no.
You're no match, and I don't know other than extreme African dangerous game weapons. I don't know that a normal man is going to be carrying anything that would even stand a chance against these things.
Well, you bring that up, and I kind of got a little bit of a story for you then. My uncle he'd be my great uncle. He was a game and fish biologist over the Mount Magazine management area. which is across the valley from where we live. It's all in that same valley. And I'm not going to say names or anything else. He's retired now. But on the backside of the mountain, the farmer contacted him, and he was having trouble with something messing with his cattle. And the farmer went out one night with whatever it was messing with his cattle, and he ran into it probably about 20 yards off. And he's carrying a 12 gauge shotgun, semi-auto. He shoots it twice in the chest. It screams at him. He shoots it again, and it dropped to its knees and stood back up. He shoots a couple of more times, and it proceeded to run through a 12-foot section of barbed wire fence as it went. My uncle got the actual hair sample. This is my great uncle. He got the hair samples and the lab report, and he showed it to my uncle and my grandpa at the time. He wasn't supposed to. I guess he was told not to show this to anybody, but it all came back as unknown. Unknown DNA sequence.
Unknown primate.
Something along those lines, yeah. And the farmer never talked about it again. We don't know if he was told not to or whatever, but he shot it point blank with double up buck, and all it did was really piss it off.
When you start getting into the government agencies and evidence, you wind up in a circle. They'll say, well, you don't have evidence because it don't exist. And since it don't exist, you don't have evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And it just keeps in that circle. It just keeps going around and around. And I think that comes down to A, budget, and B, money. You imagine the money that Big Timber would lose if these things were proven in the Pacific Northwest?
Boy, can you?
Not only the Pacific Northwest, but you're in Georgia, Arkansas.
Yeah.
Everywhere. Just think of the tourism dollars that would be lost if the government came out today and said, yes, these creatures do exist. They're in your forest. Watch out for them. You're taking your own life in your hands when you go out there because of these things being there. Can you imagine the people that would quit going out in the forest every year?
Well, you got to think too. Yeah, you got to think too. Rick, just like up where I'm from, up around Cleveland and Helen area, think of the people that go up and do a day hike on the Appalachian Trail. They bring money in. Most of that would stop.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, and that's just how much of the scientific community be in an uproar over this too. How many theories might be proven wrong if it's, say, a great ape or even early hominid, early human something, and they say all the humans have been wiped out except for us. Well, what's this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm under the impression that Sasquatch is a early form of hominid. That's my opinion on it. My opinion is that they are a flesh and blood creature, but I do in my heart feel that they possess abilities that we as modern day humans do not.
Mm-hmm.
And whether these are abilities that were bred out of us by our own choosing, I don't know. But now, I do. It does come back to me to the deal. There's a lot of people that believe these creatures can move from one portal to another, or move from one dimension through portals to another. That I don't know. I've never seen them do it. I have had a lot of wild encounters with them, but that is one encounter I have not had as of yet. But I do feel that if they are able to do it, that one of these days I will encounter that. As much as I stay out in the field and uh, chase after these things. So I don't know.
Hmm.
Richard, before our time gets too short, why don't you tell us um, what you believe these things are? I know you've kind of danced around that, but give us a.
Well, let's see. I think it could be an 8, but I think it shows way the intelligence factor of these things is just off the charts. One other quick story. I got two more actually. They're just real quick, but this I think shows the intelligence. I was sitting at home one night. This is after the limb break and everything else, and I heard something walking through the pasture, which is right next to the house. And first I'm thinking, oh, it's just my neighbor's cattle. And then the second thought popped in my head is like, he just sold his cattle last week. That ain't no cow.
Mm.
So I walk out there on the front porch and just I got this feeling like you do not need to be outside right now. And I very quickly listened to that feeling, walked back in the house, and I didn't hear anything more that night. But I went out there the next day, and the way the pasture's shaped, it has a little divot, kind of a ridge that goes down into the bottom of the pasture where a creek is. And something had been laying in that grass just enough to where it could peek over the top like that, kind of peek over the top and watch me on the front porch. And if that ain't a sign of some basic intelligence, then I don't know what is. And that was creepy.
Well, now, guys, let me give you a little info here. There's a very good friend of mine, Mr. Richard Stewart Tyler, out of Texas. Uh, y'all need to go on and check him out. Go on to Northwest Georgia Cryptics. Richard's a member on there. Check some of Richard's stuff out that he's posted. Uh, he is actually a member of the BFRO. He's done a lot of field research with the BFRO. They have actually, he's actually got uh, a lot of different things posted up there where these things, he has actually caught them on thermal doing what you just said, doing belly crawls through tall grass. So yeah, these
Hmm.
creatures do that. And
Mm-hmm.
another thing I'd like to, I don't know if I told you about this or not, Richard, was just to show you how intelligent these creatures are. I interviewed a guy a couple of years ago on here that he's from Tennessee. He was going up and camping in a national forest up there in Tennessee. He said that he's having to park in a parking area and walk for a mile into the campsite. And he said that every Friday night when he would get up there, that along about 10:30, 11 o'clock, uh, these things would start bombarding his tent with just small pebbles, throwing pebbles against his tent. He said this lasted on for 3 or 4 weeks. He said that he was at Walmart and he decided he was going to get a bucket of tennis balls and take back up there with him on his next outing. So he did. Went up there on Friday night as usual. He said about 10:30, 11 o'clock, these things started throwing those pebbles against his rocks or against his tent. So he gets out there and he starts taking these tennis balls and throwing them up through the woods. And he said you can hear these things bipedal, big heavy footsteps running, chasing after these tennis balls. He said he done that until he emptied this bucket of tennis balls. Okay? He said there were 15, 20 vehicles parked in the area where he had parked at when he came in that evening. He left on Saturday afternoon. He said he got back down to his vehicle. All these other vehicles were still parked there. Every tennis ball that he had thrown the previous night was lined up across the hood of his car. Not anyone else's, but across the hood of his vehicle. Now you tell me, where does that take intelligence to do that? Now
Yeah, they're very intelligent.
whether it's the intelligence of his scent being on his vehicle, that they knew his vehicle by his scent, or they actually knew it by sight, I don't know. But he said that every vehicle in there was not disturbed, no tennis balls on them, none but his. You tell me that.
That
Well,
is really odd.
I I don't think that my opinion is a little bit different than a lot of people's. I don't think that I think that they're I would not call them a a humanoid. I stick more along the hominid side, as the different homos, the Neanderthal. Yeah, I place them somewhere in there, but I haven't fit them into any slot yet.
I'm sorry, Chuck, I didn't catch that.
What's that, Rick?
I didn't catch that. What did you say that last part?
I said that I don't think that they're humanoid, but I do think that, well, it's kind of what I'm saying kind of don't make sense unless you think about it in my mind. I don't think they're human, but I think they're hominid, such as uh, Neanderthal, the Homo erectus, you know, uh, somewhere in there, but I haven't found the slot to put them in yet.
Right.
And that's just my opinion.
Well, but like I say, but that guy telling that story, and that those tennis balls, that he threw up through those woods were placed back on his vehicle. Now, like I say, whether it was through scent recognition or whether it was recognition of that vehicle, that particular vehicle, I don't know. But
It takes a form of intelligence to do that.
right.
Hmm.
It takes it. They have to have more intelligence than what you would say a regular ape has.
Mm.
Yeah,
Unless,
I think so.
I mean, te- technically we're apes, but you know, I understand exactly what you're saying. The great apes, uh, minus us, what you're talking about, and I think that in ways they are superior to us, and in other ways they kind of fit in between us and the great apes.
Right, and I'll agree with that 100%. I sure will.
Yeah, I would too.
But that goes back to these creatures being able to survive on a daily basis in today's world. Uh, I have to give them. Uh, I'd have to give them a 10 plus on being able to do that on a scale of 1 to 10 for the fact that Chuck, you, I, Richard, if it came down to us having to go back, say, 80 years in time and live like our forefathers did back then, you know, there's not a lot of people in this time, in in the present of today, that could do what the Sasquatch do.
Yeah,
I don't want to do it. I think I could, but I don't want to.
yeah, I agree with that. Oh, that'd be hard living.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I was born in 1958. I was born on a farm in Alabama. We moved to Georgia in 1960. I was raised on a farm until 1968, down at a small place called Spring Place. My dad run a 200-acre farm down there where we grew cotton. We grew all our necessities, corn, beans, tomatoes, whatever you had to have to live off of. We grew back then. We grew cattle, we grew our hogs, uh, and then we moved from there in '68 to a place they bought up on 225. He continued to raise cattle and hogs and farm up there for another 10, 12 years. So, I know I know what it takes to live like that. I haven't had to live like that, thank God, in quite a few years. But if I had to go back to it, I know I could survive. But my two grandsons and my granddaughter, they would have no inkling what it would take to live like that.
Mm.
They're 12, 15, and 18. And there's no way. I do not honestly believe. I do not believe that the kids of today's generation could, excuse me, could live like we had to live back in those times.
Yeah. Even compared to my generation to the current generation coming up, there's a difference for sure.
And that's the reason I say I give these creatures a 10 plus as far as them being able to survive the way they survive in the wilderness and raise their young the way they do.
Yeah, for sure. Did we lose Chuck?
Chuck, you still with us, buddy?
His picture kind of froze up, so he might not be with us.
Hey, Chuck, if you can hear me, bud.
Oh.
He'll be back in just a minute, maybe.
I'll try to save that last story I got for when he gets back. So,
All right, Richard,
yeah.
so are y'all planning on a start date on any of this? As far
It's
as
probably not going to be till next spring, give or take, I would imagine. Because I want to try to get some equipment together, all of us pitch in and try to get something together, like, I don't know, voice recorders or something. Otherwise, we just got our phones. And I mean, if we had to take just our phones, we'll do it. But, I think we're looking at spring, probably around April, maybe a little bit later, give or take. Hopefully everything will be good by then.
right, well, my best advice would be to invest in a good night vision camera, and maybe if you have to start out with one of the small FLIRs that attach to your cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
As far as being able to do thermal. I know a good friend of mine from Tennessee has one of those. We were over on a camp out and investigation over on Pigeon Mountain at Lafayette, Georgia, back a couple of years ago, and he was using that night. Now, he did have some trouble because of the cold weather. It was down like 25, 30 degrees that night, and it would cause it to freeze up just a little. But we actually caught 3 on thermal over there that night using that. So those are pretty good, especially in warmer weather. Myself, I've invested in a couple of night vision cameras. I've invested in a couple of thermals. I'm working on investing in a one of the FLIR, the big handheld FLIR thermals right now. Those things run $500-600.
Yeah.
Me being on disability, I'm on disability, and then I actually right now because of COVID, I'm getting to work 20 hours a week down at Advanced Auto Parts. Been doing that for our truck back. Hey, buddy.
Phone battery died. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's right. We didn't know what had happened to you there.
I'm actually on my computer now, so.
There you go. I'm on my phone, but I charged my battery before I ever came on.
Yeah. Rick let me know at the last minute I was coming, so.
Hey, brother, I'm sorry, man.
Hey, it's fine.
Everything with this shoulder and all, like I told you, Bill, I had to have done this today. I had to. I was running behind on everything.
Richard, you said you had one more story that you wanted to tell us about.
Yeah, this is of course this is after the limb break. It's actually after it coming up because I think a few times it actually came up in the town because you'd hear all the dogs just going crazy at certain times, but I never saw it. And the town's only had 300 people, maybe. So there ain't a lot of people, so it could probably go through town pretty easy. But this next thing happened back out on the bottoms, and me and my mom we used to drive around because she wanted to see one, and we just take a drive to the bottoms. We didn't really stop and do a whole lot. Occasionally, we get out and just listen. But this one night, I hit that S curve, back where that limb break was, and either side of the field was planted in corn, which that in itself was unusual. They never planted corn out there, but they did that year. And my headlights caught something on the right side of the road, is kneeling kind of in the ditch, I guess. And as soon as my headlights hit it, you ever seen a gorilla run? Like on Discovery Channel, whatever. Up on all fours. And it took one bounding leap to the middle of the road, and it looked like it dove over into the other side of the field. I mean, it literally looked like it dove. I don't know why, but the entire time it had been on all fours. And it wasn't like this massive thing. It's probably a little bit bigger than I was, so I'm assuming it'd be a juvenile. And it did have long hair. I mean, we only saw it for like 2 seconds. It was quick. And I remember seeing gray hair, long gray hair on like the arms and everything. It just looked really odd. And I pulled up to where it jumped off into the cornfield, and I couldn't see any sign of it. I couldn't see stalks of corn broken, nothing. It was weird. And that's probably my last encounter because we moved not long after that.
Yeah, that's some really interesting stories, Richard. I know that I appreciate them, and I'm sure Rick does too.
Oh yeah, man. Well, as far as that one goes, that thing could have, when it made that leap over into that ditch, that thing could have laid down flat, and was the reason that you actually never saw anything happen.
Well, the other thing too is these things are not just bipedal. We also, you also have plenty of reports of them dropping down on all fours, and actually a lot of reports to where their legs and their arms are spread almost flat, and they have some sort of locomotion that way. I've heard people talk about the spider walk that they do. I don't know how much to put into that. That seems like even a crazy amount of strength, even for them to be able to do that. But that you hear those reports, so who knows?
Yeah. There ain't no telling.
A good friend of mine, talking about the strength of these things. A good friend of mine, Zeus Platt, from out in Colorado. He's actually got a YouTube channel, Western Slope Bigfoot Organization. Go on and y'all guys go on and check out some of his videos that he's got. He shows trees out there, and I'm talking trees this big around to this big around, up 10, 12 foot, where these things have actually grabbed the trees, twisted them, and popped them over. Not limbs,
Good
but
Lord.
entire trees. So just go on there and check those out, and you'll actually get a sense of the strength that these creatures actually do possess.
Richard, you said that you and your uncle were starting to think about doing some more investigations.
Mm-hmm.
I would thoroughly encourage you, just because of how much information they have out there. Listen to some podcasts different people interviewing different people, but anything that's got to do with the North American Wood Ape Conservancy, I personally think that those guys are doing it right.
Right.
I mean, they're really professional about what they're doing, and it's quite a big organization. And they I don't know that much about what Rick and them do, but I understand that they're a pretty small operation, and if you're going to pattern yourself after something, I think that those guys are, a good start, and then find what fits your situation.
Right. Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know what brought it on. I've been thinking about all the encounters, and Craig's been thinking about all the stuff that happened to him. And the last year, I have been eating up every bit of thing I can find on. I mean, I've watched Sasquatch Chronicles, Bigfoot Crossroads, Bigfoot Odyssey, and I'm reading every little bit of information I can find. And then, Rick contacted me through Facebook, and then I started watching his stuff.
Yeah. They actually have a podcast. It's called Apes Among Us. So if you want to check them out, they're pretty good too.
All right.
But I think that Rick and Blake have an awfully good thing going here. I think that they get people on to share their stories, and I think that that's very important, because it's an outlet that a lot of people don't have.
Right.
And Rick, I just want to let you know I appreciate what you do for that.
Yeah, me too.
Like I said, I've had multiple encounters with these things, and we do research. At least twice a month, we try to get out in the field, do open research, find a lot of good stuff. I really enjoy doing it. I'll do this, I guess, for the day they throw dirt in my face. But it's something that I know, and I do this because I know these creatures exist. I know they're out there, and I do it to educate people, and also to give them an outlet where, as you said, Chuck, they can come and discuss what they've had, the encounters they've had, and give them an outlet to really get their stories out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm still in that believer camp. I'm not a knower yet. I hadn't laid eyes on one, and I'm pretty satisfied staying a believer.
Chuck, we're gonna have to get you out there, buddy, and one night we'll have to get together and get you out there and let you see one of these creatures up close. We'll just be
He's iffy about it.
I don't know. I've been shot at, and I've been seen landmines blow up, and many other things. I don't know. These things still spook me a little bit.
Yeah.
Hey, brother, with all that happened to you, these things are a breeze.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for I don't know, years and years, and really the only time that I really ever got, well, twice I got spooked was down at the lake years ago at Altoona. We had an encounter one night where we were about a mile and a half, 2 miles from the truck. Now, to give you a little forte on this, I was just getting over a heart attack. I'd had a heart attack about 2 months before this. And we'd walked in about 2 miles, and as we were starting to leave, Blake had turned. His dad was with us. His dad had never heard one of these things scream out. So Blake told me to do a yell. So I did. I done a yell, and just as my voice ended, this thing, now to get with these things mimicking you, this thing yelled back at us at a much, much deeper tone than mine, but it sounded identical to my yell. I turn around, Blake and Johnny are gone. Boys, I run 2 miles back to the truck. I get to the truck. These two nuts are sitting in Johnny's truck with both doors locked. I beat on the window. Johnny rolls the window down and looks at me and says, "Hey, I didn't have to outrun Sasquatch. All I had to do was outrun you."
That's what I told you a while ago. You ain't got to be the fastest. You just don't need to be the slowest.
Well, that night I was the slowest.
Oh,
I'll tell y'all a quick little non-Bigfoot related incident that happened to me one time. I was a recruiter in the Army up in Michigan, and I put a kid in the Army, and he had some, where I lived in Michigan it was country. Most people think of Michigan, and they think of Detroit or Ann Arbor or Lansing. Where I lived was wilderness, and it close to where he lived, there was a series of beaver dams, and there were brook trout. I'm trying to figure out here about this long, just filling those beaver swamps up. Well, I'll catch a brook trout. I don't care how big they are. You know, I enjoy just if I catch a little bitty brook trout, I'm happy. Well, me and him went over there and fished those one day, and he was further around the beaver pond than I was, and I was standing on the dam fishing. Well, as I'm standing there on the dam, I can't really hear anything around me for the water rushing under me through the beaver dam, and he comes past me like a streak, and as soon as he got past me, he hollers, "Bear!"
oh, that's very funny. I think his mic. Oh, there it goes.
Hey, Chuck, you're fading out there, bud.
Guys, I'm going to have to say goodnight. I don't know, something's going on here with my mic and everything else.
All right, Chuck, I'm going to go ahead and close the show out. Chuck, Richard, I really appreciate having both of you on tonight. Chuck, I will definitely use you in the future if you don't mind on a few of the shows when Blake can't join me. But I'll try to give you a little heads up next time to what's going on. Richard, great stories, man. We've really enjoyed having you on tonight. I'd like to thank all our guests tonight. We've had some real good interactions from the crowd tonight. To the people that watched it tonight and watch it in the future, thank y'all very much. And if you haven't subscribed to our podcast, please hit that subscribe and like button. Show YouTube that you like our content. Thank everyone, good night and God bless.